It's my great pleasure to introduce you today to Dr. Olivia Ong. So Dr. Ong is known as the heart-centred doctor. She's a physician entrepreneur, a keynote speaker, and a coach specialising in helping doctors overcome burnout. A rehabilitation and pain physician for over 20 years, Olivia's journey changed dramatically after a spinal cord injury that left her a paraplegic. Through her recovery, she's gained profound insights into nervous system regulation, burnout, and resilience. And today she's going to be talking to us about how to be your best friend, the power of resilience and self-compassion. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ong.
Imagine someone who wakes up each morning already carrying a heavy load. They may be caring for a loved one with MND, balancing appointments, daily routines, and the emotional weight of uncertainty. Or they may be living with MND themselves, facing challenges most of us cannot imagine, yet finding strength in the smallest victories every day. Or they could be an MND clinician or a member of the state association, pushing through a really busy workday despite feeling quite exhausted and burnt out from watching their MND clients suffer. They show up with courage, love, and resilience, even when the road feels overwhelming. Sound familiar? This person could be you. This person could also be sitting right beside you. Today, we come together to honor that resilience and to explore how we can nurture it, strengthen it, and allow it to carry us forward. Hi, I'm Dr. Olivia Ong. I'm a dual-trained rehabilitation and pain physician. I'm also a corporate mental well-being speaker who has spoken alongside celebrities like Michelle Bridges and Jessica Rowe quite recently in the Australian Women's Weekly Health Summit here in Melbourne. And I'm also a conference speaker, speaking on the topic of resilience and burnout. I'm an award-winning best-selling author, and I'm a burnout and resilience expert. I help professionals and leaders achieve peak performance and resilience through my burnout reset method, which is a neuroscience-backed system for burnout prevention and management. I'm a mom of two. Joe just turned 10 over the weekend, and Jacqueline's 5, and I've got a wonderful husband, John. But my journey didn't start here. It was far from this place of resilience and self-compassion. This was me in 2006. You could see there's no walking sticks here. This was 20 years ago. I was a young resident doctor full of hopes and dreams, always raising the bar, pushing harder, striving for perfection. I was the textbook definition of a high achiever, constantly chasing the next goal, the next success, the next level of excellence. But what happens when the bar is set so high that you can no longer reach it? What happens when the very drive that propels you forward becomes a thing that breaks you? And that's where my story truly begins. For most of my life, I was that person, constantly pushing, never stopping. Growing up in a high-achieving environment in Singapore, one of the most academic cities in the world, being good enough was never enough. And I was surrounded by perfectionists, and I was fine with that until I wasn't. And I did the same in medical school and residency, because looking back, I can see I was headed towards burnout, but it's not something that I would have been able to see back then, much less say out loud, even to myself. When things got crazy busy, I got crazy busy with them, never stopping to think, never stopping, running from ward to ward, from patient to patient, doing my charts, never feeling like I was running fast enough. I even wished I had a catheter during busy ward rounds. And just FYI, the moment you find yourself wishing that you had a catheter, that's actually the time to slow down, isn't it? But slowing down is the last thing that a lone ranger like me is likely to do, or at least trained to do. Think of the actual Lone Ranger. His whole job is saving other people, right? It's a lot like being a doctor. You gallop in just when everything seems lost. You've even got a mask on, you save the day, and then you gallop off to save the next person. Like a lot of doctors, the last person the Lone Ranger worries about is himself. He doesn't have time for that. There are people who need to be saved. That was me. It wasn't just that I was uncomfortable with weakness. I actually saw it as a personal failure. To ask for help would have been like admitting I wasn't capable. Dare I say, not competent. And yes, the medical system was to blame. But I did what so many of us do, whether we're in medicine or another high-pressure, high-stakes profession. That is to blame ourselves. It's something that a lot of people feel. When we experience adversity, we criticize ourselves, and that self-criticism ends up putting us in a spiral of negativity. And that slide from self-criticism to low self-worth to losing our sense of who we are is one that's hardwired into our brains. It comes from the limbic system, the oldest and most primitive part of the brain. It's that part of the brain that responds when we feel like we're not measuring up, not good enough, not enough. The limbic system perceives that thought of not being good enough as a threat and tells us get ready to fight or get ready to run for our lives. When our threat system gets triggered, our brain releases the stress hormone cortisol and adrenaline, and this activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight-flight response, which sends a signal to the body, telling it to brace itself because danger is approaching. Once upon a time, that fight-flight response made a lot of sense. It kept us safe, right? There's a very clear adaptive value to it. If you're walking through the jungle and you find yourself face to face with a lion, it's not the time for leisurely contemplation. You don't sit down and sort through your feelings. It's time to move, literally. The limbic region of the brain kicks in, and before you know it, you're just zooming and running for your life. The problem, well, it's actually a good thing that lions are not as much of a threat as they were once. We know that intellectually, but it's not something that the more primitive parts of our brains have caught on to entirely, and it's not our brain's fault. It took millions of years to evolve, and the fact that we are rarely in situations that demand an immediate fight-flight reaction is, at least from an evolutionary perspective, a relatively recent development. It's for that reason when our self-concept is being threatened, when we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, our brain reacts as if there's a lion behind us, one that's stuck on our back and following us everywhere. It's as if our brain is motivating us with a baseball bat, which is not very effective. When I was a resident doctor, rushing and running through my rounds, that's how it felt, like I was being chased, barreling along, not thinking, not knowing how and when I will stop, and not knowing how much I needed to. The day that it changed for me was the 10th of September, 2008. It was a day like any other, or should have been. I remember seeing the old worn-out Toyota begin to reverse out of the parking spot. I didn't think much of it until the car ran me over. What happened after that is a blur. What I remember is being thrown up in the air and hitting the ground pretty hard. When I opened my eyes, I felt an excruciating pain in my lower back. Time stood still. As I lay there on the pavement, I slowly put together what happened. First off, I was still alive. I knew that much. That was good news. The fact that the doctor part of my brain still kicked in then, that was even more good news, triaging myself. The fact that I was able to think meant that I didn't have a traumatic head injury, isn't it? And I started moving my arms and concluded, oh, maybe I'm not a quadriplegic. But then I realized I couldn't move or feel my legs at all. And then I really started to panic. I knew it meant I had a spinal cord injury. Specifically, it was what doctors call spinal shock, where there's a loss of sensation accompanied by motor paralysis with complete loss or weakening of reflexes below the level of injury. In my case, it was L1 incomplete spinal cord injury. And that moment changed my life. I was rushed to the hospital and found myself abruptly on the other side of the healthcare system as a patient. Those first days in the hospital were the most challenging of my life. I felt like a pincushion. I had drips on my arms and a nasogastric up my nose. And yes, I had that catheter that I had been secretly wishing for just a few months earlier. Be careful what you wish for, isn't it? I had never felt so vulnerable, so broken and helpless. This is a photo taken of me celebrating my 29th birthday in the rehab hospital 8 weeks after my injury, and that's my husband, John. So John is still with me, and with my close friends. On the outside, I'm forcibly smiling, but on the inside, I'm crying. Because every night, my legs are paralyzed. Every night I will close my eyes and muster all the willpower I could to try to move them, to move my legs. Nothing, and then nothing again. At this point, I didn't know if I will ever walk again, if I will be even able to practice medicine again, if I would even have kids. And the most worried of all, I was so worried that John will leave me because I'm such a burden to him. Because once upon a time, I had imagined myself as this lone ranger, self-sufficient and incapable of weakness, and now I really felt alone, in the negative spiral of a victim mindset, my own worst enemy, and in a dark space where my idea of myself just felt so entirely lost. Then one day, I heard about this Center for Spinal Cord Injury Recovery in San Diego, United States, called Project Walk. It was there, under the watchful eye of my trainer, Mika, that you can see here in the photo, that I overcame my fear of standing on my own. That's how scared I was. I wasn't even brave enough to even stand on my own. But she told me calmly, "You've got this," she told me. And I took my first few painfully slow steps. At this point, it had been 3 years since my accident. And of course, I got so excited and I said, "The doctor is back in the house," I heard myself say. But where did that voice come from? Who was that person who was able to see past all the tragedy, all the unfairness, to see what was possible and declare proudly that I was back? It was me, of course. That was my voice. I had never heard it before then, but now I knew I had to listen to it. I realized then, if I was going to be able to fully recover, to get back to the life I loved, the profession I loved, and the person who I knew myself to be, that I'll need to find a way to get me to believe in myself. If I was going to get through this, I'll need to have my own back to be my own best friend. And that was a revelation for me, because when I first arrived at the center, I had imagined that it will be their cutting-edge technology that will help me recover. The truth I found was that everything I needed was within myself. What I really needed was self-compassion and self-acceptance, and to let go of that hypercritical, high-achieving attitude that used to define me. Instead of being an autopilot, I had to slow down and be mindful, literally, of each slow step I was able to take. And I took off my Lone Ranger mask and took the time to connect with my fellow spinal cord injury survivors, bound together by our common humanity and our common suffering. And most important of all, instead of being a perfectionist, beating myself up for tiny mistakes I made, I learned to accept myself for who I was. So mindfulness, common humanity, and acceptance. These are the 3 pillars of self-compassion. And it was through them I learned what it meant to be my own best friend. Over time, I slowly regained my strength and independence with the unwavering support of my own team of dedicated carers and healthcare providers through the TAC and WorkSafe. So they were the ones who provided me with the support and still do. For people living with MND, that same circle of care is essential. I don't have to preach to the converted here. Organizations like MND Australia and the community of carers, volunteers, and providers, which include clinicians, members of state associations that all of you represent, play such a vital role in restoring dignity, comfort, and connection in the face of such a difficult journey with MND. So your work goes far beyond physical assistance. You offer emotional support, companionship, and the reassurance that no one has to walk this path alone. You help people hold on to their sense of self, stay connected with their loved ones, and find meaning in the moments that matter the most. For that, I offer my deepest gratitude. And your service is life-changing. And I'm living proof of the profound difference that compassionate care makes, not only to the person receiving it, but to their families and communities as well. So if I may, I'd like to pause here for a little moment. I'd like to invite you, whether you're a caregiver, a provider, or a volunteer, or member of the State Association, think about one time when your care made such a difference. Perhaps it was a smile, a shared laugh, or a moment of reassurance that helped someone feel less alone. And those moments matter. They ripple out in ways that you may never fully see. For that, I offer my deepest gratitude. As I said, your service is life-changing, and I am living proof of that. And why am I sharing with you all of this with you today? Because burnout doesn't just come from work. It often comes from the emotional, physical, and mental load of caring for others, or even living with MND. So caregivers often pour themselves out day after day, managing appointments, advocating for loved ones, keeping households running, all while quietly carrying their own grief, exhaustion, and hope. I know that because my husband John had to go through something similar with my spinal cord injury. And for those living with MND, the constant demand on the body and spirit can be equally draining. And the clinicians and members of state associations are just feeling burnt out and exhausted from moral injury, watching as their clients suffer and they feel helpless and hopeless. That's moral injury. And I just want to talk about someone that came to see me in my public pain clinic, Michelle. She is a social worker herself. She's a full-time caregiver for her mom who has MND. And Michelle is someone who is trying to navigate the NDIS system because her mom is under 65 with MND. And she didn't even realize that MND Victoria existed until we spoke about it. So I offered her that support and telling her to connect. We also had a chat about self-compassion because clearly Michelle was always blaming herself for being exhausted. She said, I'm a social worker, I should know better. I should be able to look after mom, and why am I always tired and all this. So we went through the 3 pillars of self-compassion. Mindfulness, just being aware that, telling Michelle, hey, I think you are suffering from burnout, just creating that awareness for her. Secondly, common humanity. Michelle's not alone. All she has to do is seek out support from MND Victoria and also talking to the NDIS case manager for her mom. And thirdly, most importantly, Michelle needs to show herself kindness, and that's what she did. And when she came to see me again, she now has personal time off for herself and is feeling less burnt out. So I think I thought I wanted to share this example because this is one of my patients, and obviously de-identified and all that, but clearly she's living quite a tough time at the moment. And too often, we push through, blaming ourselves when we feel depleted or overwhelmed. But burnout is not a personal failure here. It's a human response to extraordinary demands. It's time we change the story. It's time we recognize that caring for our own well-being is not selfish, it's essential, just like what Michelle did and just like what I did as well. What if I told you the key to thriving, not just surviving and burning out, is self-compassion? Here are the 3 pillars of self-compassion that transformed my life, and it was the antidote to my own burnout experience. Number 1 will be mindfulness, being aware of how we treat ourselves. Number 2, common humanity, knowing that we are not alone. And number 3 will be self-acceptance, speaking to ourselves with kindness. Let's go through step by step how we can cultivate self-compassion. So pillar number 1 is mindfulness, noticing your inner critic. I want all of you to pay attention to how you talk to yourself. How will you say that to a friend? Just a quick exercise. Close your eyes and think of a recent time you were hard on yourself. Now reframe it as if you were comforting a friend. What will you say differently? Common humanity, you're not alone. We often think we're failing alone, but suffering is universal. I'd like a show of hands who has ever felt like they weren't enough. Be brave souls. See? You're not alone, isn't it? Yeah. More often we carry all this stuff within us and we don't know. And self-acceptance, speaking to yourself with kindness, instead of beating yourself up, ask, what can I learn from this? The most resilient people aren't those who never fall. They are those who rise with self-compassion. Well, self-compassion is the ultimate superpower. Self-compassion is not about weakness, it's about strength. It actually helps us with our mental well-being and makes us physically healthier, improves our relationships, and makes us better leaders, professionals, and caregivers. The more we practice self-compassion, the more energy, joy, and fulfillment we experience. I feel that self-compassion is the best medicine. If I could write self-compassion on a script pad, I will give it to everybody. I'll prescribe it to everyone I see. That's how important it is. And yes, there were times when I felt like giving up still, but that's true of a lot of us. It's something that I see on a daily basis in my work today as a pain physician. When patients arrive at my clinic, they often feel like they're at the end of the line. They've given up ever getting rid of their pain, and most seriously, they've given up on themselves. Hold on, I tell them, how will you treat a best friend? Now treat yourself the same way. We're there for others, but we need to be there for ourselves. It means believing in yourself. It means having your own back. Remember that you are your own best friend. And that's easy to forget. I want to close by sharing with you a simple thing that anyone can do to remind you. It's something that I will do in those darkest days of rehab to remind myself that I have my own back and to be my own best friend. First, I'd like all of you to raise your hand, whether you're right or left-handed, doesn't matter. What feels right to you, just go ahead and put it on your heart, okay? Even if it feels a little strange, okay? And I want all of you to take 3 deep breaths with me. We all could do a little bit of that this morning. This kind of breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of your brain designed to calm you down and make you feel safe. The hand on the heart leads to the release of oxytocin into your bloodstream. It's like giving your nervous system a hug, telling her that it'll be all right, that she's safe and you are safe, and that you are with her no matter what. Hand on your heart, 3 breaths. Just like that, you probably feel your heart rate slow down and your breathing starting to relax. Use that when you feel overwhelmed or stressed. And feel how that small act of kindness just shifts something inside. That's self-compassion. I want to challenge all of you to do 1 act of self-compassion today, okay? It could be giving yourself grace when something doesn't go as planned. It could be taking 5 minutes for yourself. Or it could be something as simple as placing your hand on your heart and saying to yourself, I've got you, I've got you. The truth is we can be there for others, but we need to be there for ourselves. The moment we start being our own best friend, everything changes, and it starts now. And if you'd like to know more about the topic of burnout and self-compassion and resilience, please feel free to email me on that email address, hello@drolivialeeong.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Dr. Olivia Ong. Thank you so much.